I'm Marissa Hart. I'm 34 years old, a chef, a daughter, and for the better part of my adult life, I was the backbone of my family's restaurant. Heart and Hearth wasn't just a business to me, it was home. A place where I poured my soul into every dish, every table, every ingredient that crossed the counter. For 12 years, I gave it everything. I built our reputation from the ground up, turned a small Portland eatery into a respected culinary destination. My dishes made the front pages of food magazines. My recipes went viral. I didn't just work in that kitchen, I built it. I created the culture, the flavor, the brand. And just when it felt like all of it had finally paid off, after I secured a $1 million contract with a major hotel chain, my parents blindsided me. They handed everything I worked for to my younger sister, Brooke. A woman who couldn't cook a pot of rice without calling me in a panic. They named her CEO of the restaurant. Just like that. No warning. No explanation. Just a quiet meeting and a brutal decision. I was supposed to keep running the kitchen, they said. Under her leadership. Under the girl who once thought shallots were just tiny onions. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I walked. And when my father called me a week later, panicked because the $1 million contract I'd worked for had slipped through their fingers, I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my voice. I simply said, "Ask your new CEO." And I hung up. If you've ever been pushed aside in a place you've helped build, you're not alone. Stick around. This is the story of how I claimed my worth, by walking away. Heart and Hearth wasn't just a restaurant, it was a piece of our family's soul etched into the city of Portland. Nestled in the lively Alberta Arts District, the restaurant had that rare kind of warmth that wrapped around you the moment you stepped through the door. The scent of lemongrass, roasted garlic, and fresh-baked sesame rolls drifted through the air like memories made edible. It started long before me. My grandfather, Ellis Hart, was the real visionary. Back in 1976, he took a crumbling corner diner and turned it into a haven for American-Asian fusion, long before that term even meant anything. He believed food could connect cultures, and every dish he created was a handshake between East and West. As a kid, I didn't care much for toys or games. I was always in the kitchen, standing on a step stool next to Grandpa Ellis, my small hands reaching for the flour or trying to mimic his delicate knife work. I remember burning my first sauce and crying like the world had ended, and him laughing gently, wiping my tears, and saying, "If it doesn't burn once, you'll never respect the heat." By 16, I was in the back prepping vegetables with the rest of the line cooks. Not as the boss's granddaughter, but as one of them. And I loved every second of it. The energy, the noise, the pressure, it felt like home. That's where I first felt what I can only call purpose. My connection to that place wasn't built overnight. It was born in grease-stained aprons, bruised knuckles, and the hush that falls over a kitchen right before service hits. That kitchen raised me. And I knew, even then, that I wanted to carry my grandfather's dream forward. Only I never imagined I'd have to fight my own family to do it. By the time I graduated from Le Chevalier Culinary Institute, I was already thinking 3 steps ahead. I knew I wanted more than just a place to cook, I wanted to build something lasting. That's why I didn't stop with food school. I went on to earn my marketing degree from Oregon State, because deep down, I understood the future of food wasn't just in the flavor, it was in the brand. When I came back to Heart and Hearth in 2013, I didn't walk in expecting to be handed anything. I came back with sleeves rolled up and ideas pouring out of me. My parents seemed thrilled at the time. Proud, even. I dove headfirst into the kitchen, the dining room, the office, and every inch in between. I reworked the menu, introduced tasting nights, and created dishes that became synonymous with our name. The caramelized miso halibut, the 5-spice duck with cranberry glaze, those weren't just meals. They were stories. I filmed behind-the-scenes kitchen content on my phone and posted clips that went viral. Our following went from a measly 12 people to 60,000 loyal fans who waited weeks for a reservation. And then came the big one. A contract with Meridian Crest Hotels. They wanted to feature our dishes in their luxury resorts along the Pacific coast. A $1 million deal. Not just a paycheck, but a seal of validation. We had arrived. That contract was more than numbers. It was a symbol that our little Portland gem had turned into a culinary powerhouse. I built that relationship from scratch, every menu proposal, every tasting session, every late-night email with their regional director, Grant. It wasn't luck. It was strategy, sweat, and skill. And I honestly thought, in that moment, my family finally saw what I was worth. But I was wrong. It happened on a gray January morning, the kind Portland wears like a second skin. We were in the hearth room, the private dining space at the back of the restaurant, surrounded by old photos of Grandpa Ellis in his apron, smiling beside celebrities and food critics. It was supposed to be our annual planning meeting, a tradition we all respected, even Brooke. I showed up early with a folder of expansion ideas and a dream to open a second location in Denver. I thought this would be the year we talked seriously about it. I had plans for branding, projected revenue, everything. I was ready. My dad, Dean, sat at the head of the table, stoic, sipping his black coffee. My mom, Clara, was beside him, calm but unreadable. Brooke, of course, was scrolling on her phone, her face lit up not by passion for the business but by whatever influencer nonsense was trending that day. Still, I was hopeful. I was always hopeful when it came to family. Then my dad cleared his throat. That single sound changed everything. Your mother and I have been discussing the future, he said. And we've decided it's time to officially appoint a CEO. I remember leaning forward, heart racing. I was certain I was about to hear my name. I'd earned it. Everyone knew that. Brooke is ready to take the helm. I blinked. My fork, still midair, hovered awkwardly with a bite of short rib on it. I stared at him, thinking this had to be a joke. Brooke? The same Brooke who once asked me if parchment paper was edible? I turned toward her, and she was already smiling like a pageant queen who knew her crown was coming. In that moment, the air in the room changed. And so did everything I thought I knew about my place in this family. My jaw tightened, but I tried to stay composed. Dad, I don't understand, I said, my voice more strained than I meant it to be. I've been running the kitchen, the menu, the partnerships. I landed the Meridian Crest deal. I've been here every single day, growing this place. Brooke. She's never even worked a full shift on the line. My dad raised his hand, signaling me to stop. She has an MBA, Marissa, he said, as if that degree somehow erased a decade of my sweat and sleepless nights. She knows how to scale. That's what this place needs now, business strategy, not just good cooking. Just good cooking. Those words hit like a punch to the chest. I looked at Brooke, who was now casually swirling her coffee like she hadn't just been handed my life's work. You're great in the kitchen, Dad continued, his tone almost patronizing. But leadership requires a broader vision. I looked at my mother, silently pleading for her to step in, to say something. Anything. She just stared down at her mug and said softly, "It's what's best for the business." Brooke leaned back, her smile smug. "Relax, Marissa. You're the artist, I'm the architect. We don't need fancy halibut dishes clogging up the menu when we could be selling high-volume plates. Stuff like fried rice or burgers. Things that scale." I could feel heat rising in my chest. That fancy halibut is our best-selling dish. It's the reason we even have a deal with Meridian Crest. Brooke rolled her eyes. That was then. We're thinking bigger now. And then my father dropped the final blow, "You'll continue running the kitchen. Under her direction. Under her direction." Like I was some rookie line cook and she was the captain of a ship she'd never even stepped foot on. The days that followed were like watching a slow-motion wreck and realizing you were trapped inside it. Brooke wasted no time asserting herself. She strutted into the kitchen during dinner rushes with her tablet in hand, jotting down notes while my staff dodged her in the narrow lanes. She made faces when she saw fresh lemongrass deliveries, whispered with Dad about wasteful spending, and questioned why we sourced local duck when frozen would cost less. She didn't ask. She announced. And slowly, she began to chip away at everything that made Heart and Hearth what it was. She started scribbling notes on my menu drafts, circling dishes in red ink like a schoolteacher grading a failed exam. My caramelized halibut? Too rich. The 5-spice duck? Not scalable. She told Jordan, our supplier of nearly 8 years, to cancel a shipment of premium scallops because frozen shrimp would do. Jordan called me, confused. "Marissa, she's gutting your menu. Are you okay?" I had no real answer. I felt powerless in a kitchen I had once commanded with confidence. Even worse was the way Dad started deferring to her. In meetings with our wine vendor, he introduced me as Marissa, who handles the kitchen while Brooke was our CEO and strategic lead. I stood there, the woman who had built our tasting menu from scratch, reduced to someone who just chopped onions. Brooke even canceled a marketing campaign I'd spent weeks developing for the Portland Food and Flavor Fest, saying it was too expensive and not necessary. That campaign had brought in 10,000 new followers the previous year and packed our reservation list. But now, everything was under her microscope, and I was being made smaller with every decision. This wasn't a partnership. This was erasure. It all came to a head 10 days after Brooke was crowned CEO. The restaurant was buzzing that evening, our monthly chef's tasting night, always a packed house. I'd spent weeks preparing a 5-course menu, pairing each dish with local craft wines, fine-tuning flavors down to the final drizzle of yuzu vinaigrette. The team was excited. The dining room was full. The energy was right. I was mid-briefing with the staff in the back, going over plating and timing, when Brooke walked in, late, of course, holding her laptop like it was a scepter. She didn't wait for me to finish. She just raised her voice over mine and said, "Quick announcement, everyone. Starting next week, we're streamlining operations. That means we'll be cutting 3 specialty dishes from the regular menu, the caramelized halibut, the miso-glazed cod, and the seared yuzu scallops." Silence. The room froze. I could feel the confusion ripple through the staff like a wave. Ryan, our floor manager, looked at me, then at her, then back at me, waiting for me to fix it. I stood, my chest tight. "Those are our top sellers," I said evenly, trying to hold in the storm. "They're why people make reservations months in advance." "You can't just." "I can," Brooke snapped. "I'm the CEO. Those dishes are costly, complicated, and slowing down our kitchen. Burgers and fried rice are cheaper and faster. That's where the profit is." I stared at her, almost stunned. "Our profit margins are highest on those dishes. I have the data to prove it." Dad stepped in, raising his hand like a referee. "Enough. Brooke's done the analysis. We're moving forward with her plan." In that moment, I realized it wasn't my restaurant anymore. Not in their eyes. So I turned, walked out the back door, and didn't look back. The night air hit me like a slap, cold, sharp, and real. I stood in the alley behind Heart and Hearth, the distant hum of Portland traffic mingling with the muffled clatter of pans inside. My hands trembled, not from the chill but from anger, disbelief, heartbreak. I'd poured over a decade of my life into that kitchen, into that name, and now I was being treated like a stubborn employee who refused to fall in line. I paced for a bit, heart pounding in my ears, then pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. "Naomi." She picked up on the second ring. "Where are you?" she asked. "Outside. I just walked out. Do you want to talk?" "Please." We met 30 minutes later at a late-night diner near Powell's Books, one of those old-school joints with laminated menus and coffee that tastes like memory. I spilled everything. The boardroom ambush. The halibut being axed. Brooke strutting through the kitchen like she invented food cost. My dad watching it all and saying nothing. Naomi listened, her face calm, her eyes sharp, absorbing every word like she was building a case. When I finally stopped to breathe, she stirred her coffee and asked one question: "If this wasn't your family's place, would you still be working there?" The answer came before I could even think. "No," I said. "I would have left months ago." "Then why is this different?" Her question lodged itself in my chest. "Because it's family? Because my grandfather built it? Because I'm scared of what walking away says about me?" Naomi leaned forward. "You've already built something incredible. Don't let them convince you it's theirs." That night, I realized I didn't have to stay where I wasn't seen. I had to start thinking about what was truly mine. By the time I got home that night, something in me had shifted. The sadness hadn't left, not by a long shot, but underneath it, there was a flicker of clarity. Naomi's words echoed as I stood in my small kitchen staring at my recipe notebook, the one I'd been filling since culinary school. Every page was a part of my story. Every scribble, every sauce ratio, every crossed-out ingredient held the proof that Heart and Hearth hadn't just been a family business, it had been my canvas. And now, I was ready to take it back. I stayed up until 3 a.m, making lists. I reviewed my contracts, my supplier emails, my agreements with partners like Grant from Meridian Crest. I realized that while the building, the logo, and the title of CEO belonged to the family, the relationships and the work, those were mine. No one handed me those. I earned them. Every dish that ended up on a hotel menu, every marketing campaign that brought in crowds, every loyal supplier who bent over backward because they believed in me, that wasn't Parker's or Dean's or Brooks. That was mine. By morning, I had a plan. I backed up all my digital files, menus, marketing strategies, press features. I had never stolen anything, I had built something, and I was taking what I had built with me. Then I wrote my resignation letter. It wasn't dramatic or angry. It was clear, professional, final. That afternoon, I walked into my father's cramped office. He looked up from his cluttered desk, surprised to see me. "We've got that corporate event tonight," he said, holding up a checklist. "Not we," I said quietly, placing the envelope on his desk. "You do." "I'm done." Effective immediately. For the first time in years, I chose myself. The first few days after I left were eerily quiet. I turned off my phone, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I needed silence like air, space to think, to feel, to breathe without someone second-guessing me or trying to convince me to come back. I stayed in my tiny apartment in the Alphabet District, watching the world from my window while the chaos I'd walked away from unfolded in the distance. It felt strange at first, no kitchen to run, no prep list to scribble, no shift to lead, but it also felt oddly peaceful. I didn't realize how heavy it had all become until I set it down. Then, on the fourth morning, I turned my phone back on. It lit up like a pinball machine, texts, voicemails, emails, dozens of them. Brooke hadn't just fumbled the torch, she dropped it in a puddle and then stomped on it with both heels. My inbox overflowed with questions from confused vendors, delivery delays, frantic staff, and a handful of loyal customers wondering why the miso cod tasted different. Jordan, our seafood supplier, had texted Marissa, Brooks asking about bulk frozen fish. "That can't be right, can it? You always insisted on fresh." Kristen, one of my best line cooks, sent a late-night message that simply said, "Last night she changed the menu mid-service. Half the plates got sent back." Customers were furious. Even Ryan, my floor manager and one of the most level-headed people I've ever worked with, left a voicemail that I played twice. His voice was tight with stress. "The kitchen's a mess, Marissa. She doesn't know what she's doing, and everyone's feeling it. You've gotta call me." But I didn't. Not yet. They had made their decision. I wasn't going to swoop in and fix what they had broken. Not unless things changed on my terms. On the 8th day, I got the call that confirmed what I already suspected. It was Grant, from Meridian Crest. His voice, normally warm and easygoing, sounded clipped and strained, the kind of tone someone uses when they're trying to remain professional while standing on the edge of frustration. I sat on my couch, the morning sun barely breaking through the cloudy sky, as he got right to the point. "Marissa, what's going on at Heart and Hearth?" I closed my eyes, already bracing myself. "I'm not with the restaurant anymore, Grant," I said calmly. "Brooke is handling things now." There was a pause. "Yeah," he said slowly. "I figured as much. I met with her yesterday. It didn't go well. I didn't speak. I didn't need to." He went on. "She came in with a slide deck about cost-cutting and scaling menus. She couldn't answer basic questions about your dishes. She pitched frozen appetizers, burgers, generic stir-fries, nothing that even remotely resembled what we signed up for. I asked about the caramelized halibut, and she didn't even know it had a miso reduction." My stomach clenched. "Marissa," he continued, "our partnership wasn't just about food, it was about trust. You built that trust. You understood our brand and delivered quality every time. That's gone now." I swallowed hard, hearing it land like a verdict. "I'm sorry," he added. "But I'm going to recommend that Meridian terminate the contract." I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. "I understand. But listen," he said, his voice softening. "If you're planning to go somewhere else, or start something new, call me. We'd still love to work with you." When the call ended, I just sat there in silence, staring at my blank wall. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. But I did feel one thing, vindicated. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again, this time it was my dad. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, almost breathless. "Marissa, we need to talk." There's confusion with suppliers. Call me. An hour later, another one followed. The kitchen's struggling with the new menu. We could really use your input. And then, around midnight, a third message came through. His voice was heavy, shaken. Pacific Lux is pulling out. $1 million, Marissa. Please call me. The next morning, I finally picked up. Marissa, he said quickly, almost as if he was afraid I'd hang up. Thank God. We're in trouble. Grant told us he's pulling the contract. Said the meeting with Brooke was the disaster. I know, I said evenly. Grant called me. There was a pause on the other end. He called you? Yes, I said. He said Brooke pitched fast food garbage. He said she didn't even understand our menu. And now he's terminating the deal because the trust we built, what I built, is gone. Silence. Then, my dad's voice dropped into something almost like pleading. You need to come back. Talk to him. Smooth things over. You know how to handle him. That made me laugh, sharp and bitter. Handle him? Dad, I built that relationship. I was the one meeting with him late at night, revising menus, adjusting wine pairings. You think I can just waltz in and clean up Brooke's mess because you're suddenly realizing she wasn't ready? You're the only one who can fix this, he insisted. This is your family's business. We need you. His words weren't wrong. But they were late. I didn't want to fix it for them, not if it meant returning to the same place that had treated me like I was disposable. I took a breath, steadying my voice. If you want my help, it's not about me coming back to patch things up and pretend none of this happened. It's about finally recognizing what I'm worth. I'm not returning just to be shoved back into the kitchen and take orders from someone who doesn't even know what a reduction is. My dad hesitated, and I could hear the wheels turning in his head. This wasn't just a daughter upset with her parents. This was a professional who had built a brand, lost it, and now had leverage. He cleared his throat. What do you want, Marissa? I'd been waiting for that question. I want equal partnership, I said clearly. If I come back, I don't work under Brooke. I work beside her. We make decisions together. Second, I want equity. Real ownership in Heart and Hearth that reflects the value I've built, my dishes, my partnerships, my reputation. Third, I want public recognition of what I've done. No more Marissa runs the kitchen. No more token acknowledgements. I want my role and my leadership made visible. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then came Brooke's voice, sharp and offended. Equal partnership? Are you serious? I'm the CEO, Marissa. You can't just walk in and demand my job. I don't want your job, Brooke, I replied. I want what I've earned. I landed the biggest deal in this restaurant's history. I doubled our revenue. And you lost that deal in a week. So tell me, why should you lead alone? Before Brooke could answer, my father spoke again, his tone more serious now. We'll talk to our lawyer, he said. We'll draw up terms. Make it formal. I nodded slowly. Good. Because I already hired mine. The moment I said it, I already hired my lawyer. Brooke's expression cracked. Her face twisted in disbelief, like I'd broken some unspoken family rule. You have a lawyer, she asked, half laughing, half accusing. I didn't flinch. Yes, I said calmly. This is business now, not just family. And it was. I'd come to that cafe ready to negotiate, to protect my stake, and maybe, if the terms were right, return to the business I'd built with my bare hands. But as we sat there, and I watched my father scramble to make deals, and Brooke bristle at the thought of sharing power, something inside me shifted. I started thinking about Grandpa Ellis, not just the restaurant he created, but the way he did it. With passion. With freedom. Not to make millions, not to impress investors, but because he believed in what he was serving. I'd carried that same spirit all these years. But this meeting, it didn't feel like legacy anymore. It felt like salvage. And I didn't want to spend the next 10 years fixing what they broke. Actually, I said, my voice quieter now. There's another option I've been thinking about. My dad looked up, hopeful. What's that? I'm not coming back, I said. I'm starting my own restaurant. The words hung in the air like thunder. Brooke scoffed. You're bluffing. You can't just start over. You need us. No, I said, meeting her gaze. I don't. I built the dishes. I built the following. I built the brand. You're the ones who needed me. And you didn't see it until it was too late. My dad paled. Marissa, we can work something out. It's already worked out, I said, standing. I'm building something new. And this time, it'll be on my terms. And I walked out, lighter than I'd felt in years. 3 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my own restaurant, Marissa's Table, watching the first plates leave the pass on opening night. The space was small but warm, nestled in Portland's Capitol Hill district, a blend of rustic charm and quiet confidence. Copper pans hung from the walls. Herb planters lined the windows. The scent of garlic, lemongrass, and citrus drifted through the air, familiar yet new. Every detail, every tile, every table was handpicked. This place wasn't just mine, it was me. Naomi, my friend and now business partner, caught my eye from across the room and gave me a nod, the kind of look that says, you did it. And I had. We'd poured ourselves into this place, scraping together savings, fighting city permits, negotiating contracts late into the night. But it was worth it. I wasn't just rebuilding what I'd lost. I was creating something better. We opened with a menu that felt like home. The caramelized halibut returned, the seared yuzu scallops made a comeback, and even the miso-glazed cod had its rightful place. Dishes that once made Heart and Hearth famous were reborn under my own name. And people noticed. Grant from Meridian Crest had been my first call after that final cafe meeting. I didn't pitch. I just said, I'm cooking again. He said, then we're in. He signed a deal within 2 weeks to feature my dishes in 2 Seattle hotels. $500,000 to start. It wasn't just a win. It was a statement. That night, customers filled every table. Former regulars from Heart and Hearth, new faces drawn in by buzz and reputation. As the final course left the kitchen, I stood by the doorway and let it all wash over me. I had walked away from everything I thought I needed. And in doing so, I found exactly what I deserved. About a week after opening Marissa's Table, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it, almost unsure. Marissa, can we meet? Just us. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect the peace I'd finally carved out for myself. But something in her tone, quiet, almost vulnerable, made me say yes. We met at a small coffee shop tucked away from the bustle of downtown, far from the shadow of Heart and Hearth. She was already seated when I arrived, stirring a cup of herbal tea, her hands fidgeting with the rim of the saucer. For a long moment, we sat there in silence. Then, finally, she spoke. I should have said something, she whispered. Back at that meeting. I knew how much you'd done, how much of that place was you. I just didn't want to stir things up. I looked at her, my jaw tight, but I stayed quiet. I grew up believing that men made the decisions and women supported them, she went on. I saw your father as the leader and thought my role was to keep the peace. But watching you walk away, seeing what you've built now, it made me realize how wrong I was. I didn't expect the tears that rose in my eyes. I'm proud of you, she said, reaching across the table and gently touching my hand. You're doing what I never had the courage to do. Her apology wasn't grand. It wasn't wrapped in perfect words or emotional theatrics. But it was real. And that made all the difference. That conversation didn't erase the past, but it cracked something open between us. For the first time, I wasn't just her daughter. I was a woman she admired. And that, finally, was a start. If my mom's apology cracked the door open, Brooke's call was like hearing a faint knock on the other side. It came a month after that final cafe meeting, unexpected but not unwelcome. Her voice was different this time. The sharpness was gone, replaced by something more hesitant, even human. Marissa, she said. I didn't expect it to be this hard. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was ready. I didn't respond right away. I let her words settle. There was no triumph in hearing her admit it. Just a quiet, hollow kind of truth. I'm sorry, she continued. For dismissing you. For acting like I knew better. I didn't. Can we talk sometime? Not about work. Just us. I hesitated. Brooke's arrogance had cut deep. Her condescension had driven me out of the very place I built. But she was still my sister. And this wasn't the CEO talking. This was the kid I used to chase around the backyard. The one who used to sneak into my room when we were little, scared of thunderstorms. That version of her felt far away, but maybe not lost. Yeah, I said finally. Let's start there. We met for drinks a week later at a quiet bar near the river. It was awkward at first, me nursing a glass of wine, her poking at a cocktail she didn't finish, but then something shifted. She started asking questions. Real ones. About the menu, about what went into building trust with vendors, about how I'd made it all work. And for once, she wasn't challenging me. She was listening. I didn't gloat. I didn't lecture. I just answered her honestly. She was learning, not how to run a kitchen, maybe, but how to be a sister again. And that, too, was a beginning. My father didn't reach out for weeks. Not when the restaurant opened, not after the first glowing review in the Portland Herald, not even when my name started popping up again in local food blogs. I wasn't surprised. Dad had always been a man of silent pride, firm in his convictions, slow to admit mistakes. But then one afternoon, about 6 weeks after Marissa's table opened, he showed up unannounced. I spotted him through the front window, standing awkwardly by the host stand, hands shoved deep in the pockets of his old jacket, looking around like he wasn't sure he belonged. "Dad?" I said, walking over. He nodded, glancing at the buzzing dining room. "This place, it's something else." I gestured toward an empty bar stool. "You want to sit?" He hesitated, then did. For a while, we didn't talk about the past. We talked about Grandpa Ellis instead, about his early days, flipping eggs at 5 a.m. and perfecting his lemongrass chicken in a kitchen with one working burner. Dad shared memories I hadn't heard before. Like how Grandpa used to say, the heart of a restaurant is the hands that stir the pot. I could feel the weight of those words as we sat there, side by side. Eventually, he looked down at his glass of wine. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "I thought Brooke's degree made her the better choice. I didn't realize how much you carried heart and hearth until you were gone." It wasn't a grand apology. But for him, it was close. I nodded, letting the silence fill in the rest. I didn't need a speech. I just needed him to see me. Not as a daughter trying to prove herself, but as the woman who had already done it. And finally, I think he did. What surprised me most in the months that followed wasn't just the customers who found their way to Marissa's table, it was the people behind the scenes who did. Slowly, one by one, my old team began to reappear. Ryan was the first. He came in after a brutal week at Heart and Hearth, sat down at the bar, and ordered a plate of halibut without saying a word. When I brought it out myself, he looked up and said, "I'm done over there. If you've got room, I'm in." I didn't hesitate. "Welcome home," I told him. A week later, Kristen walked through the door. Her apron was in her hand, her face tired but determined. "I'd rather cook your food than anyone's," she said. "I miss being proud of what's on the plate." I laughed, hugged her, and gave her a spot back on the line. Denise Hart, our longtime seafood supplier, was next. She showed up with a crate of fresh scallops and a smirk on her face. "Couldn't let you reopen without me," she said. Brooke wanted frozen tilapia. I told her she was out of her mind. We both laughed, but it wasn't just about the scallops, it was about trust. These people had followed me not because I'd asked, but because they believed in what we built together. Even my former regulars found their way back. Familiar faces filled the dining room, some bringing flowers, others just a smile and a warm, "We missed your food." And they meant it. The reviews began rolling in. The reservations filled weeks in advance. Grant expanded our hotel partnership to a second location. Naomi and I started dreaming bigger. This wasn't a rebound. This was a rebirth. I hadn't just recreated what I'd lost, I'd built something stronger, clearer, and entirely my own. Every morning, I walked into Marissa's table with a quiet kind of joy I'd never known at Heart and Hearth. It wasn't flashy or loud. It didn't come from headlines or hotel contracts or even full tables, though we had all of that. It came from something deeper. From walking through a kitchen I had designed. From working beside a team I had chosen. From serving dishes that told my story, not someone else's. Each plate that left the past was a piece of who I was. Years of experience, lessons learned the hard way, and flavors born out of both struggle and love. Sometimes, I'd stand at the edge of the kitchen and just watch. Watch Ryan orchestrate the front of house like a symphony. Watch Kristen prep scallops with a smile that hadn't been there in months. Watch Naomi, calm and wise, coaching a young sous chef through their first rush. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was proof. Proof that I didn't need a family name to succeed. Proof that walking away hadn't been failure, it had been power. And the most beautiful part? My family was still part of my life, but on my terms now, not theirs. My mom started visiting regularly. Sometimes just to chat, sometimes to help peel garlic while we caught up on life. Our relationship was gentler now, more honest. Brooke, too, was different. She still had her flaws, so did I, but she'd stopped pretending she knew it all. She asked questions. She listened. We weren't close yet, but we were getting there. Even Dad showed up now and then. He'd sit at the bar, order his usual glass of wine, and quietly eat the halibut he once approved removing. And when he left, he always said the same thing, "You did good, kid." And this time, I believed him. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that knowing your worth isn't pride, it's freedom. It's the moment you stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's mold. The moment you realize that staying quiet, staying loyal, staying in your place, it won't get you the respect you've already earned. You have to claim it. You have to stand up, even when your knees are shaking. Even when it's your own family sitting across the table, telling you that you're not enough to lead what you built. I used to believe that if I just worked hard enough, they'd see me. That loyalty would be repaid with recognition. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, people won't see your value until they feel your absence. Walking away from Heart and Hearth was the hardest thing I've ever done. It wasn't just a job, it was my childhood, my sweat, my name. But it was also the best thing I've ever done. Because when I walked away from their version of my story, I found my own. Marissa's table is more than a restaurant. It's the result of 1,000 sleepless nights, quiet sacrifices, and one very loud decision to say, no more. If you've ever been in that position, undervalued, overlooked, or underestimated, I want you to know you're not alone. And you're not crazy for wanting more. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to be respected for what you bring to the table. If this story resonates with you, drop your own experience in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs the reminder, knowing your worth isn't selfish. It's survival. And sometimes, survival means building your own table, where you finally get a seat at the head.